Hey y'all, did you know that your student may need to have a letter of recommendation completed to have their college scholarship application be marked as complete? Most colleges nowadays are requiring that students have at least one recommendation letter or a recommendation form submitted to be eligible for any of their college scholarships. Today we're going to talk through all the reasons why, tips and tricks for asking an individual to be their recommender, and how to go through that process. My name is Shannon and I have worked in the college arena for over 12 years. I've held positions all over campus, from working in the dorm life area to working in financial aid, awarding scholarships to students, and working behind the scenes on creating scholarships and maintaining scholarships with donors to then be awarded to students. I want to share all of my tips and tricks with y'all so you can best support your students. So let's jump on in and talk about how the process works. Depending on your student's college, they may be asked to complete a scholarship application to be eligible for any college scholarships, whether that's general scholarships that are available to students of different backgrounds or involved in different activities and interests, or scholarships specifically for their major or minor. Most schools have application processes for this and have multiple steps students need to complete to be eligible. Now, depending on the school, there are some scholarships that students could be eligible for without applications, but those are typically recruitment scholarships or scholarships that are based solely on GPA or different identity factors. And so it's really important that students are every single year completing their scholarship application so that they're eligible for scholarships. A big key piece to take away is that every year a student is eligible for more scholarships. Many donors create scholarships that are for students who are upper division students. So juniors, seniors, super seniors, because for donors, those students are very committed to their major. They're most likely going to go into the field that is related to their major. And so those are the students they typically want to support. As well as your student's GPA changes every year, things are involved and change every year. So every single year, no matter how much time it takes, it's important for them to complete their application. Now, a big step of the application is often a letter of recommendation or a recommendation form. Now, why do they do this? There are always tons of scholarship applications submitted every year for every college. If you think about an average state school might have 16,000 students, and then you have 3,000 of those students applying for scholarships, those individuals all have to be reviewed. Every single application is reviewed by different committees to see who is the best fit for those scholarships. Now, remember, every individual scholarship has its own requirements or guidelines, so it's really about matching students to the best fit. But you also need information from those applicants, whether that is short answer questions that your student is completing, whether that is checkboxes or scales. But getting recommendations really helps send students over the finish line. Many times it is hard as individuals for us to brag about ourselves. Some people don't have that issue, but many of us do. And remembering all the amazing things we do, we also can't always talk about the impact we have on others. So letters of recommendation or recommendation forms really are that extra key to get those details that applicants don't always have about themselves. It is getting those extra bits of how they impact the club they're involved in, how they impact their community, or seeing their growth as an individual or growth in a club, a sport, or growth in academics. For many scholarship applications, there's two types of processes that they could have. Option number one, which is the most popular, is where your student will enter in the name and email of the individual who's going to be recommending them. This will then send an email to that individual within a link to log in and complete either the recommendation form or submit their letter of recommendation. Option number two is where your student actually themselves is responsible for uploading those documents from their recommender. That option has gotten less popular over the years, as it's really easy in this day and age for scholarship application systems to just send an email to the recommender and get it straight from them. It's less chance of plagiarism of a student pretending to be a faculty member or staff member, and then it also is relying on getting all those details from them. Now, for many scholarship applications, at least one recommendation is going to be required. Many schools, though, do allow for up to 2 scholarship recommendations to be submitted. I always say if your application allows you to have 2 or 3 recommendations, have it be the goal to get as many recommendations as possible. And we'll talk about more details of that in a minute. But the more detail you're providing the scholarship reviewers, the better. So let's get into some tips. Tip number 1, ask your recommenders and ask early. So, biggest takeaway you can get from this, your student needs to ask their recommender to actually recommend them. Now, I always recommend asking in person, but you also could ask via email or during online office hours. Those are both acceptable. But it's very important that they ask the individual and not just assume that they would write a recommendation for them. Now, this is important. A, no one likes to just be told things. No one likes to get an email that just says, hey, you have something due, when they've not been asked by an individual to help them out. Along with that, recommendations take some time. You as an applicant want quality recommendations. You don't want a form recommendation letter that just says, yeah, they're great and they have a 3.5 GPA, or they're super involved in these clubs. Like, you want individuals who really get to take the time to provide those details about your student, to provide information that would help cross them over into the top applicants for those scholarships. So it's always important that your student asks their recommenders. Now, part 2 of that is asking early. Now, I always recommend that your student asks their recommender at least 2 weeks prior to the scholarship application opening. Many scholarship applications are going to be open for about 2-3 months, give or take, depending on the school. So it's really important to ask before the application even opens. Now, you will always see there's a rush of people getting asked to be recommenders once the application's already opened or in the last 2 weeks of the application being open. And that can be really frustrating for faculty and staff. Like, they want to help their students, but they also want to do a good job on those recommendations. And when you're trying to do a bunch of them last minute before the deadline, you're not always going to give the best quality of your work because there's just not enough time. Remember, faculty and staff have jobs that they are doing. They have their outside lives. Things come up, illness. They need to have time to write these recommendation letters or fill out the recommendation forms. So let's give an example. At quite a few of the state schools I've worked at, the application usually opens during winter break. So let's just say January 2nd, and then it's open for about 2.5 months. Now, since it opens during winter break for schools that are on semester systems, I recommend the student asking in early December. Now, why early December? That's going to be more than 2 weeks before the application opens. The last few weeks of December are bananas. You have finals week, faculty and staff have grading to do, or they have all these extra events that are happening at the end of the semester. And then you have the holiday season, which everyone has their own personal responsibilities. So asking early really is setting them up to have that recommenders know that as an individual and as an applicant, you value their time to complete the recommendation and that you want quality work. So, reviewing this tip, always have your student ask first. It's best to ask in person, but if they can't, asking via email or during online office hours is fully acceptable. And making sure to ask early, at least 2 weeks prior to the application opening, but depending on that timeline, it might even be a little earlier for them to make sure that they're asking at an appropriate time. We don't want to ask a faculty or staff member the day before winter break to be their recommender because they have so much other personal things going on and things they're wrapping up for their job that it could just end up at the bottom of the to-do list. Now, tip number 2, who should be asked to be a recommender? This is a big question, and it really depends on your student and the application. Does the application allow for one recommendation or does it allow for multiple recommendations? If the application only allows for one letter of recommendation, I recommend they ask someone who can give the best, well-rounded picture of them. So that is somebody who knows them academically, as well as knows what they're involved in, whether that's at school or in the community. Now that is a unicorn of a person, but doing their best to pick somebody who can speak to all those aspects would be ideal. Now, if they don't have someone like that who's that unicorn, I would lean towards going either 2 ways. Option A is somebody who is able to best speak to their academics. Now, at many college campuses, faculty are involved in scholarship application reviews. And so if you imagine they want to know about the student academically, because that is their sphere, that is the world that they are in. So sometimes having a letter of recommendation that really speaks to their academics could be the winner for them. Now, option B, the other way you could go with this, is to ask someone who can best speak to the aspect that the student is strongest in. If your student is super into academics, they're super into their major, and really involved in their major, asking someone who can speak to that is the best ideal. On the flip side, if your student is good at their major, but they are super involved in campus, they have leadership positions, or they're super involved in the community, you want to ask somebody who can speak to those strengths because they're stronger in that area than they are in their academics. So it really depends on your student and the areas they're strongest with. Now, in a perfect world, if the scholarship application allows for more than one letter of recommendation, I really want you to strive for having one letter that speaks to academics and one letter that speaks to those other things, the involvement, whether that's community, on campus, their strengths as an individual, the challenges that they have overcome. We want to paint a well-rounded picture of your student. So when a scholarship reviewer is reviewing their application and reading those letters or those recommendation forms, they get a full picture of who your student is, what they excel at, and the things that they have overcome. So in my perfect world, anytime it allows for 2 letters of recommendation, get 2 letters of recommendation. Make sure they can speak to those academic sides and that involvement side or what they've overcome aspects to really provide those reviewers that information. So tip number 3, prep your recommender. So you've already asked the recommender. They have agreed they will write the letter of recommendation or fill out the form. What do you do next? I always recommend that your student provide them with an email with a brief overview of the instructions of what they'll need to do, the due dates for the application, so when it opens and when the letter needs to be submitted by, and then provide them with, I'm going to call it a college resume. So this document should include all relevant facts about your student. We're not applying for a job here, we're applying for a scholarship. So really it's their college resume. This is going to include their major and minor, their GPA, core classes that they have taken about their major. It's going to include all their involvement on campus, so any clubs they're involved with, sports, leadership positions they have, events they volunteered for or been involved in, as well as any community outreach they've done. So if they've done any community volunteerism, is there an organization in the community that they're super involved in? We want to paint a full picture in this college resume of who your student is, everything they have done during their time in college, or if they are a high school student applying to go into college, what they've done in high school. Same thing if your student is transferring in, what did they do in high school and what did they do at their community college to transfer over to the institution. We are painting that picture of all those details. Now, why is this important? So many times, faculty and staff who are asked to write letters of recommendation are asked by multiple students. And like we talked about before, life happens. They are teaching classes, they have personal things, illness. And when you sit down finally to write these letters, they want to write a detailed letter. They want to be able to provide all the information that they can to really help boost your student's application score. So you are essentially giving them a cheat sheet with all that information, so it will magically stem their brain to be like, oh yeah, they're also involved in the finance club. Oh yeah, they took all these finance classes and they got A in every single one of them. Wow, like that's amazing. Oh, and they also volunteered for St. Jude's Hospital during their free time and winter break, or they went on this spring break Habitat for Humanity project. Providing all those details is what's going to provide extra detail for your recommender to add into the letter, but also to kind of just, remind them of things. I could tell you right now so many things that some of my previous students have done, but I don't remember everything and I'm not expected to. So if they provided me with this college resume, I would be able to speak way more to all of those detailed things than I would if they didn't provide me that background info. Now, a sub tip for this is to make sure that your student completes this document in like Google Drive or saves it somewhere in a cloud system that is fully accessible. That way, as the year goes on and they're prepping for the next year's scholarship application, they can easily just add and edit the document versus starting from scratch every single year trying to think back on all the things they did. Now, truthfully, I would recommend your student keeps two forms of this document. One that is everything they've ever done: high school, community college, all the things that they have done over those years. And then a version of it that they actually will provide their recommender, because sometimes things are not relevant, or too long time has passed and they're not relevant at this time, or they're not relevant to the specific scholarship application. Sometimes your students may be utilizing this information to ask the recommender to write a recommendation for a specific scholarship, and they only need some of those details and not all of those details. So saving that on a cloud-based system is the best way to go, because your student will be able to just add and edit every single year. So tip number 4, following up with their recommender. So we've asked our recommender well in advance prior to the application opening, and we provided them all those details: when the application opens, when its deadline is. We provided them our college resume with all that information. What are we going to do next? It's great to send your recommender a reminder email once the application's open. Now, I do not mean at 12:01 a.m. the day the application opens. Maybe a day or two after the application's open, sending them an email that's like, hey, I asked you last month. As a reminder, here's my college resume with all this important detailed information for you. The application is now open and letters of recommendation are due by X date. Just a friendly reminder email. Also, faculty and staff get so many emails a day that things get buried. They might be trying to find your original email and it might just be down there. You sending them a follow-up email is just going to be a little extra prompt for them to get it done. Now, for many scholarship systems, students are actually able to see if a recommender has completed their letter of recommendation or the recommendation form or not. If we're getting close to the deadline, about a week out from the deadline, and it is still not submitted by that individual, I think it's okay to send them a reminder email of, hey, just as a reminder, the requirement is due by this Friday at 4 p.m. Once again, here's my stuff. If you need anything else from me, please do not hesitate to reach out. Being friendly, not accusatory of like, why have you not done this yet? Because sometimes people work best under pressure. Sometimes the letter of rec is just going to get submitted right before the deadline. But it's nice to keep things on people's radar, being friendly and just general reminders so it doesn't drop off their plate. Now, once the recommendation has been submitted, I really want your student to follow up with their recommender. Now, in my perfect world, sending them a thank you card would be the best option, but also just a thank you email. Having that written proof of I appreciate you taking the time out of your day, out of your personal time, because oftentimes these are not written, during office hours, during academic time where the individual is actually working. They're often written during personal time when they're at home. It's nice to get that I appreciate you message. So always follow up with the recommender. Always let them know that you were grateful for them taking that time to complete this recommendation for you. That is going to set you up for success for the following year when you're completing this application again, or completing future scholarship applications, or even completing future applications to grad schools or doctoral programs, that they will be even more likely to support you and write those letters of recommendation because you have acknowledged their hard work. So tip number 5, what to do if you do not have a current faculty or staff member that you can go to ask to be recommender. Now, that's not an ideal situation. You want to make sure that you're being involved and have those individuals, but it does happen. So let's talk through some options. I would always then recommend next is that you go to someone who can still speak to your academic or involvement ability. And typically that would be if you are an incoming student or a first year student who's just been at the university for a short amount of time. You can go back and ask someone from your high school, ask a teacher, ask a counselor to be able to write those letter of recommendations for you. Same thing with transfer students. It's okay to be asking people at your previous institution. But as you get further along in your academic career and you've been at the school well over a year, it's not in your best interest to be asking somebody from a previous institution. You want to make sure you're asking somebody who is at the school and is relevant to your current academic career. Now, this should go without saying, but it is never okay to have a friend, family member, or yourself write your letter of recommendation, unless the application allows that, which I would be hard-pressed to find a scholarship application that does allow that. You should never be trying to cheat the system because I'll be honest, in many of the years that I've worked at reviewing scholarship applications, we have caught students faking being a faculty member, using a Gmail instead of the work email. The writing style is not the same, or they're using AI to generate a letter and then pretending to sign it as the individual, which is fraudulent. That is never an okay situation. Now, tip number 6, our final tip for the day, is how to build yourself up for success for getting these letters of recommendation. Now, the top things I can recommend to your student are to get involved. And this means either joining clubs that are related to their major or joining clubs of things that they're interested in. It means going to faculty office hours, whether those are in person or online, taking the time to talk to their faculty members. Many faculty members are teaching huge classes. Now, depending on your institution, those class sizes can range anywhere from 20 students to a couple hundred students, especially in general education classes. It is super important for them to make relationships and seeking out those relationships with individuals. So I recommend for faculty, going to office hours, asking questions, communicating via email, making sure they know your name to your face can make a big difference when you're asking for a letter of rec later on. Now, with staff, if you're involved in different clubs on campus, if you work for departments on campus or been involved in other areas, same thing, making sure that you are talking with them, communicating with them, they know your name to the face, they know the things you've been involved with. At the end of the day, it is up to you as the student to get yourself known and to build those relationships so someone's willing to write those letters. If you, as a student, just go to class, show up, do your work, leave, you do not communicate with your faculty who are teaching your classes, you're not involved in any clubs or sports, and you don't talk to any staff on campus, you're setting yourself up to not have anyone who's going to be in a good position to write you a letter of recommendation. Now, there may be some faculty or staff out there who would write you a form letter and be like, yes, I can speak to that this student got an A in my class, but I don't know anything else about them. That is not going to set you up for success. That is not going to provide details and information that is going to set your application apart into those top scored applications. You need individuals who know you as a person, whether that is as a student or your involvement, to be able to speak about you and write these letters of recommendation or complete these recommendation forms. Yes, you're going to give them your college resume and provide them extra details to help them along the way. But if they don't know anything about you, how are they supposed to write about you and support you? How are they supposed to put their name to backing you to ensure that you can get a scholarship or get into your next institution if you're wanting to go into higher education with graduate schools or with doctoral programs? You have to build those individual relationships, and that is only up to the student to do that. It is not on the faculty and it's not on the staff to build those relationships. If you want to be able to get those recommendations, you have to do it yourself. Alrighty, y'all, so those were my top recommendations and tips to help you get recommendations for your scholarship applications. Now remember, at the end of the day, you need to be building relationships with individuals who can be recommenders, asking ahead of time if they will be a recommender, providing them detailed information like a college resume to help support them writing that letter or writing that form, and then making sure you're following up with them, whether that's needing to send reminders, but also thanking them once they've completed the job. At the end of the day, the ball is in your court as the student, and you need to be providing that information to the individuals and building those relationships. Now, as a parent, what can you do to support them? Make sure they're building those relationships. Ask them what faculty members they've talked to. Ask them what faculty members they have gone to office hours. Are they communicating with staff? Are they involved on campus? Encouraging them and supporting them the best you can to get involved in these different areas. You can't do it for them, but you can bring it up in conversations. You can remind them, you can ask them questions, because at the end of the day, it's up to them to make it happen. If you liked this video, please go ahead and click on the like button below and subscribe to my channel. I hope you all are having a wonderful day and staying healthy, and I'll see you next time.